Hi, and welcome to Behind the Paddle. I am Paulson Victoria.
And I'm Emily Sim.
Yeah, and today we are going to talk about, what is it called?
So it's the proposed Prostitution Offences and Support Scotland Bill, which has been named Unbuyable, Women Are Not for Sale. Which is a lovely consultation that is on at the moment, and is due to end on the 12th of September. So we thought we'd do a wee episode on it and just kind of discuss what it's about, what the research for it is based on, and a little bit about really why it's wrong and why we should all be filling in the consultation to kind of speak out against it. Cool, so this consultation is by Ash Reagan, who is an MSP in Scotland. She is a member for Edinburgh Eastern and has proposed this bill to create an offence of paying for sexual services, to repeal the offence of soliciting or importuning by prostitutes, to repeal previous convictions for soliciting or importuning by prostitutes, and to support those in or exiting prostitution. Which is a whole lot of words for basically saying the Nordic Model, which some of you will have heard of before.
Yeah. I love the way that they're saying, supporting. And it's like, okay. Let's see what evidence you have to, support this, basically. I mean, we start off by saying, quoting, prostitution is a system of violence that reduces women to commodities and affects women's ability to achieve equality. Now, we discussed this a wee bit before the podcast, and it really, really, really annoys me when there's people like her who haven't done sex work, and then they go off on about trying to achieve equality. And it's like, how? Why? Why?
Yeah, it boggles my mind that there are people in politics that are speaking on subject matters that they have no experience with, know very little about, because all of your usual big names like the World Health Organization, like Amnesty International, like the UN, all are in support of decriminalization. So to put a bill like this together, you're going out against all of these big massive worldwide organizations and their advice and all the teams of researchers that they have that have led them to that decision.
It makes no sense. And it's the whole achieve equality. And it's like, I think a woman having their own job, like being self-employed, amazing, absolutely amazing. And from my knowledge of sex work, it starts off usually at like $150 an hour, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you can't talk about like equality in wages, because that's quite a lot of money compared to like minimum wage. Like, you can make a good argument for like minimum wage as for like equality and things like the pay gap. But when it comes to achieving equality, what I would like them to expand on that. In what way do you want equality, and you don't see the equality in not like prostitution? You can also have males and non-binaries. So again, I think it's very gendered.
Yes.
Because this is only including women's ability to achieve equality. It's only talking about women.
Mm-hmm.
It's not talking about anybody else in the sex work industry, in prostitution.
It's really interesting that you've said that, because this is a quote from Reem Al Salem, who used to work for the United Nations, doesn't anymore. And I'm not saying this is why they left, but during their time working with the United Nations, received quite a lot of pushback from their peers because of their anti-trans views, or at the very least, some of the things that they had said publicly could be taken as such. They were very focused on like sex and gender not being conflated, and that both need to be recorded in data, meaning that people like aren't able to change their gender because their sex at birth would always be like attached to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not able to separate the two. This seems to be a bit of a running theme, but we'll come back to that in a wee bit. I just thought that was worth mentioning just because of what you were saying there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the overrunning theme is just the people who talk about this and want to put the Nordic model in place usually do not come from sex work themselves. Especially they haven't done prostitution. And I mean, I'm sure politics pays quite a good amount of money, but I love it. So there are negatives, absolutely, to prostitution, as there will ever be in any other workplace where there is a woman.
Or just any workplace, you know, there's pros and cons to every job out there. Like
Exactly. My first point was, if you're a woman, there is a high chance that you will be harassed in a workplace.
Totally.
Which is in any workplace. And it's not
especially
just...
if you're working alone. Like, lone working increases your chances of that by so much.
Yeah.
Like, because you're by yourself. Like, even just being out, not even working, just by yourself on the street, it includes that risk.
Yeah, like, so for instance, if they made the argument, oh, you could get raped doing sex work. Yeah, you absolutely can, but you can get raped by your boss in the office as well. I don't see that much of a difference, really, because you are, yes, you're giving a service. And even if it is prostitution, you still can get raped and sexually assaulted. Absolutely.
But don't blame the job. It's like blaming the woman again. It comes back to this, like, that is the perpetrator's issue. Like, that's an issue in and of itself. Like, the situation surrounding it makes no difference. Like, a crime has been committed. Like, that's...
Exactly. Like, why are you damaging the victim rather than actually pursuing the person who has done the bad shit?
Yeah. It's just victim blaming. Like, oh, because of their job, this is why this has happened. Like,
totally. And one thing which she says is, some argue that involvement in prostitution is a free choice that must be accepted. I mean, I'm okay with people knowing that I do it and things, and it is a free choice for some people. For some people, I won't sit here and say, oh, there is no trafficking, there is no bad things.
But again, that is true in so many other professions as well. Like, it feels weird to just tar this with the same, like, that's the issue. It's not the job that's the issue. It's the trafficking that's the issue. And that should be what's being focused on and being tackled, rather than, like, again, victim blaming. Like, oh, they were put in this position because of X. Like, go to the root of the problem.
Yeah, like, people get trafficked for all types of different things. So, like, to manufacture stuff, to...
Literally every job.
Yeah.
Literally every job.
Like... But they just want to pick on prostitution. And so, yeah, free choice that must be accepted. The truth is that for most of women, prostitution is not a choice, but a response to dire circumstances. They sell sex to survive.
Again, that can be true of every job. Like, everybody's got money to make. Everybody has to pay the bills at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And then, to, like, destroy basically the whole freaking argument of what they're trying to say, they then say poverty is the primary factor. of driving involvement in Scotland as it does everywhere else in the world. And it's just like, right, okay. So you've just said that poverty is the problem. Okay. So why don't you actually put money into like the police force, which are actually that's one of the sectors, okay? um
Let's go for mental health services or
yeah,
like education and training for
there's
poverty.
a good few things.
Yeah.
So like the police, I want them to have more training with cracking down on actually um finding more traffickers and
Oh,
things like
totally.
that.
Totally.
That's where I think money could go in that way, and how to actually treat prostitutes when they do come in,
Yeah.
rather than just treating them like a bloody piece of meat, because it is not nice at all. But yeah, that's where I feel like some money could go. And then mental health, absolutely. I do.
Make poverty the issue that you're trying to
Yeah,
fix.
poverty is the issue, which a lot of sex workers we're trying to say. Even people who are advocating for sex workers, we realize that poverty is a massive big issue. So what was it? Hawes Eye View. She made a very, very good breakdown of everything to do with most things to do with sex work.
Yeah.
Highlighting that poverty is a massive big issue.
Yeah.
Which,
in terms of like exploitation, poverty is the driving force, but exploitation exists all throughout the world in all these different ways. And like, it's not to say, I don't even want to say that prostitution is one of them, because it on its own, like, it is a job, it is a role that people are trafficked into. But it's the trafficking that's the issue, it's the exploitation that's the issue. Like, is that what you were going to say? Just,
yeah.
like, there are so many jobs out there that exploit people, that people are going and they are selling their body every day for. Like, if they are working and doing manual labour for 20 years, you know, they're going to be like pretty broken at the end of that.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's strange that like we pick on some things and not others. Cool. To circle back a wee touch, there was another part to this where she was saying it violates the rights of those who are sexually exploited within it. Its victims are denied their human dignity and often experience inhumane and degrading treatment, treatment which is today increasingly recognised as a form of torture. And then I quote, frontline organisations explain that the consequences of prostitution for mental health are similar to those of victims of torture. Now, this is quite a hard-hitting quote. There was a couple of kind of references attached to this, which I obviously went and had a look into, just to see, because this isn't something I have personally come across before. As someone who is kind of quite aware of what's going on with a lot of the frontline organisations involved in sex work, at least in the UK, this wasn't something that I'd come across. So, one of the references is for Reem Al Salem again. So that was the United Nations worker that we were kind of speaking about at the start. And the other was for Dr. Melissa Farley, who is a researcher and presented this quote in a workshop called Prostitution and Torture in April this year. Now, I had to be looking at her. She is a psychologist from America. A lot of her studies have been in like New Zealand and South Africa, and there has actually been a complaint put in about her. 2 seconds, just to grab the name of the boy. Where did it go? So Callum Bonacci put in a complaint against her, stating that the statistics she'd used in her studies were false. One of which was she'd went over to New Zealand, who have full decriminalisation of sex work and have done since 2005, I believe.
Wow, that's actually really early.
Yeah, I think they were, I would imagine, one of the first places to do it.
Oh, yeah.
We will do a future episode on that. Anyway, So one of the things she'd stated was that after they'd introduced the full decriminalisation of sex work, that Auckland had a between 200 and 400% increase in street prostitution, which is massive. This is like one of the arguments for the Nordic model, is that decrim will increase demand, rather than decrease it, as what they think the Nordic model will do.
Mm-hmm.
And the actual study that she's quoting was by the Prostitution Law Committee, which she cited several times throughout the study that she did. Had actually said that there was around 360 before the bill came into place, and there was actually only 230 in 2007, 2 years later. So there was actually a decrease in the amount of street sex workers over that time. The reason why he put in a complaint about her is that quite a lot of this study was just like a big massive criticism of the Prostitution Law Committee study. So she just went into really in depth, like pulled up lots of their points that they had made in the study and criticised them in great detail. So to him, she had like a really good understanding of this study, and she had clearly read it in order to do this, and yet the information that she then presented about it was false. So to him, he thinks she's intentionally misleading people with her papers that she's putting out. And this is what's quoted in the government consultation, which is great.
God.
So, yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But part of her thing is that, so the questionnaires that she had given out to people, she used to diagnose them with PTSD, which is where this like prostitution's the same as torture kind of line came from.
Right.
Apparently when she had went over to conduct the study, had asked like none of the governing bodies in that country, which is like the kind of bare minimum you're supposed to do when you go in and conduct research in other countries. You know, the ethical thing to do. So yeah, that's quite an interesting read. I'm not going to go in about it too much, but I just thought it was quite relevant that even within the first paragraph of this consultation, like all the people that are being used are kind of discredited in some way by their colleagues and other professionals. So yeah, it feels like they've kind of had to grasp at straws a wee bit while digging up some evidence to back up their claims, which I mean makes total sense to me, because it's just yeah.
I mean, the whole prostitution's like torture. You get like the same effect.
Yeah.
It's just like, no. Just like, this is what I mean, where it's like, okay, cool. Like, I would love if any sex workers who agree with this want to come forward.
I think where this gets complicated is that this woman has clearly been interviewing people who are doing survival sex work.
Mm-hmm.
And what comes along with that is poverty, is trauma, is like a lack of choice.
Yeah.
Which, like, I'm not denying that in any sense. Like, there needs to be more done about that. But this, like, blanketing everybody to, like, quote unquote, save these people that really just need, like, support in other areas of their life in order for them to make choices for their life. Like, it makes sense that there is, like, PTSD potentially, or what, I don't even want to say that because it just feels like nonsense, but that there is trauma there for these people because of the way that they're living, do you know? And that is heartbreaking, and that is something that there definitely needs to be something done about. But this is not the way to go. This is not the answer.
No. It's like my experience. I love sex work, absolutely. Prostitution, great, love it. I love being an escort and everything like that. Does he stop? Yeah, I love being an escort. It's great. I've done this for like 7 years now. So, I mean, with the trade, you get a feel with who a certain client is, and your alerts are always on. Thankfully, I've never been in a situation where I have to, that I'm doing survival sex work, where I have no choice for it, or not necessarily I'm in danger, but like,
You're vulnerable, I feel, when you're in that position because
yeah,
you don't have the ability to make choices in the same way.
absolutely. I'd say you are 100% more vulnerable to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like,
But again, that's not a job based issue. That's just
no,
how these
yeah,
people, that's that person and their full situation. Like, their job is just one aspect of that. Like,
absolutely. It's whatever way you look at it, it always comes down to poverty.
yeah,
And
totally.
like when I was growing up, I what's the word? I did college and all that shit. I got my grades and whatnot, but I didn't like minimum wage because it's so low, and especially these days, it's like, how is it livable? Like, if you have a kid, you need at least 30 grand spare a year or something, especially when they're newborn, because diapers are god expensive. So, what was my point? My point was, um, that the minimum wage is way too low still, even in 2024.
It's not the living wage.
No, no.
And it boggles my mind that those two things, like, we accept that it's not the living wage and it still exists anyway.
Yeah. It's like, with me and the situation I've put myself in, like, financially, I would not be able to fucking live on that at all. Like, my bills alone are like 60 grand a year. So it's just like, how on earth are people meant to actually get a good living? Like, when I think it was when we went bitches and we were sitting down for breakfast, and I was like, I don't know how people survive under 50 grand a year. And it's like, I don't, like, good on them, because
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do it.
I mean, that's the majority of people.
Yeah, which
Like,
is scary. It's not nice to think about,
yeah.
because especially me, who went through like a child custody case, and because I make over a certain amount, which over 14 grand, I think it is, you have to pay for your own solicitor, lawyer, all that stuff. And it's like, a solicitor, lawyer, they're like at least 150 an hour, at least.
Yeah.
And it's like, how is somebody on the minimum wage meant to afford that? Like, even if you're just a grand over 14 that you're
Is
making.
it 14?
I think it's 14 grand.
Because
Yeah.
that's really low. Is it? Will it be 26 maybe? Like 14 over the.
Let me see. But yeah, I don't know how people live under 50 grand a year, especially when it comes to like emergency circumstances. If, thankfully, here in the UK, we have the NHS, so we don't have to pay for services. But if we go private, we have to pay. If you're over 25 and you need dental work, you have to pay. The vets and stuff, like if you have an animal, like an emergency bill like that, it's crippling to some people. It's so
people
easy.
just go into debt. That's.
I was going to say, it's so easy to get into debt. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, credit card.
Yeah.
Ooh, nice.
People have to get creative with their. In 2014, the Scottish Government and COSLA, who I believe are like the governing body of like therapists and psychologists and stuff, like counsellors,
Right.
issued a joint policy statement called Equally Safe, which says that prostitution is violence against women. And yet, in the 10 years since, there has been no attempt by the government to align the laws around prostitution to this policy.
There definitely needs to be better laws around prostitution. And I just feel like it just all comes down to poverty. So that is the main underlying issue.
Basically, I had seen a thing where she was talking about that at the same time as that change was made to um, say that prostitution was seen as violence towards women and girls by the government, was also the time they were talking about banning fireworks, or at least putting more regulations on. That bill went through, and there was changes made to who was able to buy fireworks, but
Where's this? Sorry, is
in
it
Scotland.
in Scotland?
Mhm.
Okay.
But prostitution has kind of fell by the wayside because the SNP are working with the Greens party, or trying to create like a coalition. Like they work quite closely with them, and Greens are obviously all for the decriminalisation. It's why this has kind of been put to the side, because it's not something that they're going to see eye to eye on, and because they are currently trying to work together, or have been in the past, it's something that has kind of been put, a pin has been put in it, and it's been put off to the side.
Yeah.
Which the woman who wrote the consultation actually left the SNP. She's not said because of this, but it's kind of rumoured that that was part of the reason why.
Yeah.
That she wasn't happy about that, and she also wasn't happy about like the gender reform bill.
Who exactly is this?
So what was her name? Ash Regan.
Okay, so this is the person who has
Put this consultation
put
together.
the consultation together.
Yeah. Who's now part of the Alba party.
Yeah, no, I like the Greens. I think that they're the only party who actually want to decriminalise it, and I've actually
Them and Lib Dem as well.
them and Lib Dem. I prefer the Greens over the Lib Dem. And it's nice. It's really nice to see. Parties actually saying they want to make a difference in a good way. I want to say
because they're actually listening to the advice of like
actual sex workers,
actual like worldwide organisations that are doing the research that show that it just causes more harm than it solves. Like this is where it gets really frustrating, because this whole thing is talking about like the exploitation, the violence towards women, but if the Nordic model comes into place, what happens is, for those that aren't aware of the Nordic model, it's basically criminalising people who buy sex. So it means that if a client comes to an escort, it's going to be so much harder to like vet them, because why would they want to give their ID over when there's a chance that they could be arrested? Like it's just driving a lot of things that are currently have processes in place for checking and keeping people safe. Like all of that is going to be so much harder.
Yeah, like me, for instance, I don't really screen my clients that much because, yeah, like I screen my clients just a little bit, not like major. I don't ask for like ID or anything like that, because if they kill you, they kill you in my fucking eyes. Like that's the worst of the worst that can happen. You can like go to the police if anything happens, but again, it's a toss up if the police would actually do anything. There is a lot of corruption and problems
and stigma attached, which causes more issues than the thing itself, really.
Than it should, yeah. There are a lot of clients that don't want to hand over their information because it's their information. They don't want you to know their real name, and they don't know if you could blackmail them. There is a lot of, not cons, but there are a lot of things where they might not want to do it for whatever reason. So I understand from a client's point of view where they wouldn't want to give more information over.
Aye, if that's true just now, what would it be like if they face criminal charges on top of that?
Oh, I don't see them
Like, it's just going to drive, even like the places that you would meet people or the way that you would actually get contact from people in the first place, like all of that would change. It's not to say it would stop, it would just change and it would become less safe because it would be
Yeah.
through less regulated and
It'll be so underground.
yeah, it would just drive everything underground more.
And it's just, we as sex workers get taken advantage of in general with like how much fees we need to pay for advertising and how much like rent costs housing, in terms of like if the landlord knows what you're using it for or if it's like a dungeon and things, because there are, it can be pricey, it really can be. But that is just like the industry itself in general. And then you've got the main freaking thing, survival sex workers. What's gonna happen to them? Like that's fine. Forget about sex workers like me who aren't survival. But when it comes to actual survival sex workers,
Who are the people that this bill's aimed to protect the most?
right?
It's going to just.
It doesn't make any sense because you're putting them more at harm. So like, okay, are you gonna bring this bill in and give the survival sex workers like a pot of money basically to like give out to help poverty and things? Like,
I like say what they're trying to do works, which it's not gonna, but say it does, and it drives down the demand. Because this is also called the in demand bill. It's been known by quite a few names. They keep changing it when people work out what it is, which is interesting. But so the aim of this is that if they criminalise the buyers, that the demand for them will go down because they'll put more people off, quote unquote, and they'll stop there being as many people that actually want to buy sex or sexual services. Sorry, but that's not what it, even say that did happen. It's not, but say it did. Where is it leaving all these vulnerable people that have turned to this again for money because they don't have any other options? Like, what's going to happen to them?
exactly. It's so
it just doesn't make any sense. Like, they're just going to put them in even more vulnerable positions.
Yeah.
And realistically, like, it's not going to happen. Like, the places where they have tried this, the demand for sex, like sexual services, hasn't gone down.
no.
So the thing that it's trying to do is just nonsense anyway.
Absolutely. It's like, would you call it a metaphor? I'm not quite sure. In the way of like, it's like saying to your kid, "Oh, you can't do this." It's like, oh, I don't want to fucking do it 10 times more.
Aye. Look at like the prohibition in America. I feel like this is what I always go back to, like when they were like, right, nobody's allowed to drink anymore. Drinking's illegal, and it just made like there just ended up being like a black market, like crime went up, like it just caused so many more problems because it just makes the thing less regulated and makes people do things and take more risks to actually do the thing they were doing before rather than stop doing the thing. Like, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It's ridiculous that they think that this is going to work when they haven't tried to do sex work. They haven't actually realized what the consequences would be. Because the survival sex workers, what are they going to go into? Are they going to go into drugs then? Into like selling them? Are they going to move around the UK and just forever be homeless or something? What's going to happen to their kid? Are they going to now get their kid taken off them? It's affecting more than one person.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. And it's like the people who have pimps that are survival sex workers. Do you not think of the consequences that could actually happen with them?
Yeah.
You should be fighting poverty
and exploitation.
and exploitation.
That
absolutely.
should be where the focus lies. And I find it funny that even like reading this consultation and the kind of the foreword to it, that is the big hitters. That's the thing that they keep referring back to all the way through. And it's like there's so much time and money and energy being spent on speaking about prostitution rather than these issues.
Absolutely.
Like,
and again, it's
if,
just aimed at women.
yeah, totally as well. Yeah, it's just aimed at women, and I feel like, yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
Absolutely. Like, sex work for me, I love it. I would not be doing any other job. I guess a good example was like when I did professional cookery, I did that in college, and then I went to apply for a job as a chef, and they were really sexist, and they were just like, oh, because you're a woman, it would be better if you were like bar staff and whatnot. And I was like, okay, so I can be discriminated here and sex work, because it's a job at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's a job with other people. So my own experience kind of debunks the whole, you won't have this sort of experience
Yeah, totally. Like that
in
is
sex
just
work.
an experience that you have as a woman
Yeah.
everywhere. Like it's not like just because it happens in sex work also, like that's not like a sex work issue, that's like a gender issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
It's
there's yeah.
you could go as far as to be like, teach the men
Yeah.
while they're in schools how to actually teach women. You could go as far as that.
Yeah.
Um, because we were on about the whole way that sex ed was split up in school and things like
Yeah.
that. So like, a lot needs to change, which it shouldn't just be down to, oh, it's the women, it's the woman's fault of going into this, and so we're gonna stop them from earning as much money.
We're just
gonna
gonna make it harder for them
Exactly.
in order to save them.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense.
Yeah. Like, I can't speak for survival sex workers because I've never really been put in that position. I've always depended on sex work for like payment, but I've never been.
That's different though. That's like a job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like you're in a position where you are like having to. Aye. You're not being forced into that position. That's a choice that you've made.
Yeah, like it's really hard to discuss survival sex work because it is sad and it
Yeah.
is very brutal, and the fact that this what is it meant to be?
What do you
The
mean?
paper, the bill,
The consultation.
consultation is meant to be helping those people, when it doesn't. It really doesn't. Like, I would love for Scotland and the UK to just have brothels in the way of managing sex work, because they have them in Germany, and that seems okay. They do raid them every so often because they've believed that there are traffickers in there and things like that. And they do have people standing outside and saying no, no, all that stuff.
Like protesters and stuff. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the word. But I think that would help, because then survival sex workers it would just be for survival sex workers. They would have a place to safely do it, and they would have condoms, lube, wipes, and there would be free checks, free health checks. And it's one of those things which I really, really hope happens, but I've not seen it be proposed, or it being proposed in a way of like this consultation where it's saying it's helping survival sex workers, and it's just like, why don't you come up with that? Like, we have certain places. We have one in, I think we discussed one in Dundee and one in Glasgow, where people can use needles safely. So why can't we have
Why can't we take the
brothels?
lessons learned from the decriminalisation of drugs and take them? If we're looking from just like a harm reduction point of view for people like who are doing survival street work, sex work, sorry, like that. I don't understand why we can't draw parallels between the two.
Absolutely. I think it also just comes down to the whole, it's still taboo, it's still shameful.
More so than drugs, though? More so than heroin? Like, I don't understand. Like, I feel like they are very different issues and they're separate, and I think, like, I'm not saying that the two should be treated the same, but just in terms of, like, harm reduction as a concept.
Yeah, but could you imagine though if there was a consultation built around just females doing drugs?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah. It just hits a bit wrong. It
yeah,
does.
absolutely.
Like, putting it in that context, like...
Because that's the exact way that they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not getting paid to do drugs? I don't believe.
No. You are paying to do drugs.
I don't believe there's that sort of network. I'm just trying to think. I mean, you get paid to do. No, you do get paid to do drugs by scientists and trials and things like
Not
that.
here.
No?
I wouldn't have thought so here.
I thought in the UK.
I don't want to say no. I just know, like, you don't get paid for, like, giving blood or like
True,
anything like that. Like,
true.
all of that's illegal here, so I would imagine that that would come under the same thing, but I don't know.
Ooh.
Because I feel like that's like an American thing. Because you get paid for blood, you get paid for sperm, you get paid to be in research trials.
Oh, the UK is so backwards with everything, and
I mean, I think that one's fair.
with like not getting paid for
Yeah.
like sperm and that.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because you're only supposed to give blood like every so often, and like people do it till they're ill to make money.
True.
People can be exploited for that.
Oh, that's a good point.
Which isn't relevant, to be fair, because aye, people can be exploited for everything, and that's the bad bit.
It just proves that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what was my point? We went on the ADHD sidetrack there.
So, as another quote, so prostitution in and of itself is an abuse of a woman's body. So how do you make abuse safe for its victims? Do we still today treat the injuries of a domestically abused woman and then send her back to her abuser? We do not. We campaigned for and adopted laws that recognise domestic abuse as violence against women. Today we punish the perpetrator, we support victims to leave their abuser, and we help them to heal from their trauma. So, this is... I have mixed views on this, because one, domestic abuse does not need to just be violence against women. It can be violence against anyone of any gender.
Absolutely.
It's gender-based violence, which I think is the more the better term for it than domestic abuse. I feel like there's a lot of connotations attached to that. We have definitely come far from like that time. Did you ever see the clip of the boy on the Jeremy Kyle show talking about his girlfriend locking him on the balcony?
They laughed
and I'm having to climb, like having to jump out the window or something like that to actually get down, and everyone laughed. Like, I think about that on the reg. Like, we have come a long way since then, I feel. I feel like this is just another, like, campaign trying to, like, tug on people's heartstrings. Like, why is this relevant? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, in that situation, like, who's the abuser? Like, what's the parallel they're trying to draw here?
I think maybe they're trying to say pimps. I'm not too
Which
sure.
is fair. Make that illegal. I mean, that is illegal already.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's no, like, who they're targeting with this. They're targeting the people that pay for that service. Pay for any service.
Yeah, this is the whole freaking... I want to...
Like, that's no abuse. That's, like, a job.
Yeah.
Like, aye. I feel like even in situations where there is a pimp or people are being exploited, like, a lot of the time the women aren't seeing that money. They're not being paid for their time. Like, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Or if they are, like, they're not in a situation where they're free to just exist. Like, out with that. Like, that's choice has been made for them.
Yeah, my point, going back, that I remembered was, yeah, I wish there were brothels
Mm-hmm.
that had security and things like that. Yes, it would.
It comes with its own set of problems.
Yeah, it would lower the amount of clients, but at least the survival sex workers would be in a safe environment.
Yeah.
There might be some, I would suspect, that wouldn't want to use it,
Mm-hmm.
but the place is there
Yeah.
in case
It's
they do.
opening options up for people,
Absolutely.
while hopefully there's something else put in place to tackle the poverty, to tackle the drug abuse, to tackle like what was the other thing I'd said?
Minimum wage.
People just
Exploitation.
not exploitation,
All
that was
stuff.
it. Yeah.
But again, that is all down to the government that we have. And right now that is Labour. So
Ish.
so we shall see, because we can only do so much, people on the ground. It's all down to the government and what they say, basically.
So the next part is, it's past time for our law on prostitution to be similarly updated to reflect our recognition of this as a violent exploitative system that promotes degrading views about women. In the countries that have adopted the Nordic model, a challenge and demand approach, women are safer, men's demand for prostitution is reduced, and the market for trafficking for sexual exploitation has shrunk. Harmful gender stereotypes, as well as inequality between the sexes, are changing for the better. This is achieved by shifting the criminal responsibility from the seller to the buyer, offering exit alternatives and public education campaigns.
Who are we educating? What?
So this is kind of going back to what we're talking about. It's frustrating that it's again men's demand for prostitution. Like, I don't understand why all of this has to be so gendered. Because
yeah, like I've seen non-binaries, I've seen trans, I've seen couples, and just females, and
Yep.
it's like,
it's not
why?
like a men and women's issue.
Yeah,
Like it, and it's frustrating that they've made it into that.
absolutely.
Um,
Again, it could all just come down to treat men how to make how to be better around women. Go with that. If you think men are the problem, that you have to put sanctions in place for them not to be able to see prostitutes, female prostitutes, actually teach them how to treat a woman right. If that's what they're thinking the problem is,
because a lot of this is just that gender-based violence again. Like, that's where a lot of these statistics are coming from, rather than it being like an issue of like escorting. It's just an issue of like men and women being alone together in the workplace. Like,
yeah. Which is where it's like, why doesn't it say that men are a danger?
Yeah, and this is the thing as well. Like, obviously, we've just said that this bill is putting everyone in gendered language, and then we are speaking about gendered things. But like, the problem is bigger than just that. Like, the statistics that they're talking about are gendered, which is why we're discussing it in a gendered way. But the next part is literally talking about harmful gender stereotypes and shifting the inequality between the sexes. And I find it so frustrating because for me, like, what this boils down to is people seeing sex as degrading.
Yeah.
And people like seeing sex as dirty and as shameful and as wrong. And like, that is like a gender stereotype thing. Like, that's like, oh, being penetrated makes you like worth less.
Yeah. It's the whole
Like,
oh, if men had sex with hundreds of women, then he's a player.
yeah.
Whereas if a woman had sex for free, or actually getting paid, it doesn't make a fucking difference these days, does it? They're still a whore.
Yeah. Like that. Like, this bill is actually like further like defending these outdated stereotypes.
Absolutely.
Rather than like being a part of the change that they're claiming to be. Like,
Yeah.
I don't.
It's like when a woman wears a short skirt, it's like, oh, she's a tart.
Yeah.
Like, why are you dressing like a hooker? It's all of those things like combined, and it's just like, can we stop thinking about that, please?
Yeah. Like, sex work is not what is promoting degrading views about women.
Yeah.
Like
I want to feel good about myself when I wear like a mini dress or
yeah,
a
like you should be able to
shirt.
wear whatever you want and be free from harassment, but that's just not the case, and that is where the issue lies.
Yeah.
Like, sex work is no the root of misogyny.
No.
Like, I wouldn't even argue that it's a product of it. I feel like it being demonised is a product of misogyny. Like, I feel like the reason why people take an issue with it, like, is coming from, like, what we've just been saying. Where, like, being penetrated is bad, like, having sex with loads of people is, like, bad. Like, it just comes, and it must be that they're being exploited because nobody would choose that. You know, like, it just.
Oh, it's like when somebody has a STD or STI and people are like, "Oh, they're dirty."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Fuck off." Like they've just had hopefully they've just had some fun or
Yeah.
whatnot. Yeah, and it's just like that they're not. Like it goes also back to like HIV and things where people just didn't even want to touch them.
Yeah.
AIDS and they just they didn't want to be around them. They wore masks and things, and it's
Yeah.
like, can we not? Like, can we get out of the whole being a dick phase, please?
Yeah.
It is very much still traditional, which not traditional, but like it's carried on.
I think at the end of this, when they're talking about offering exit alternatives in public education campaigns, that's good if it has the correct information in it. Like, I think people should always be given an option to exit sex work or
Yeah,
any job. You know, like, if anybody's in a job and they're not happy, 1,000,000%, there should be options for people. You know, like, nobody deserves to be trapped in doing something that they're not enjoying. But there are loads of people that do it that enjoy it.
Yeah.
And, like, that's okay. That's allowed. And that, like, these people shouldn't be getting blanketed in with all the people that don't have a choice and don't have an option. And, like, fix that. Don't just, like, tar everybody with the same brush and put everybody into more dangerous situations. Like, it's just not the answer.
Absolutely. I think as well, if you want to go into education and be like, oh, you could do this job for minimum wage. And it's just like, I'm sorry, but like, you can't go from, say, like 20 quid a blowy, and that blowy could, that the blowjob could last for like 20 minutes.
So £1 an hour, that's
yeah.
not bad.
Still 20 quid at the end of the day. Why would they then go to like a minimum wage job? I don't like.
That's not, like, to say that's the only option, though, for people.
No, but like I'm thinking like of the worst of what could possibly happen in the ways of like
Minimum wage. Loads of
I'm
people
sorry.
exist every day on minimum
I'm
wage,
sorry.
Jasmine.
I meant a survival sex worker saying, "Oh no, I'd rather go back to sex work because it pays more."
Yeah. But this is the poverty issue again. This is like, you know, this is where there needs to be bigger systematic changes that help everybody in poverty. Not just like people, because there's loads of people that are working jobs that are working multiple jobs, working well over the legal limit every day just to pay the bills. Like, this is a problem that goes beyond just this one job that people focus on so much. Like, there needs to be changes made, and this is no the way to go about it. This is distracting for the issue at hand.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
And it's just wasted energy, in my opinion. And it makes me a bit sad because there's better things to be focusing on that will help more people, including survival sex workers. Cool, I think it was just kind of rounding off what she's written. So she's put, my proposal for a bill seeks to adopt the Nordic Model in Scotland. It will challenge men's demands for prostitution by criminalising the buying of sex, protect those who sell sex by decriminalising them, which is the case at the moment anyway, and recognise them as victims of exploitation by giving them the legal right to support, which everybody has anyway, as far as I know, if they're making under the amount that we couldn't find. My hope is that in the not too distant future, when this trade in humans is finally consigned to history, people will look back and be horrified that we let the sex trade flourish in the way that it has for as long as it has.
I want to flourish.
So, going back to Whore's Eye View,
Yeah.
which was a show we went to a couple of weeks ago by Caitlin Bailey.
In the fringe.
This is the oldest profession. This job has existed since the beginning of humanity. You know, it's been about for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Like, it's just frustrating that this is called a trade in humans. Like, it's grim to me that that is how this woman sees sex work. That person is buying that other person, when that is not the case. They are providing a service for an allotted amount of time.
Yeah.
Like, once that time is up, that's it, done.
Absolutely.
Like, it's not...
Like, get the fuck out.
It's no different to, like, any other job where it works like that. Where you, like, meet with somebody, you discuss what you're going to do, or what service you're going to provide. You set a price, you get paid that price, you do the thing, you leave and go home.
Absolutely.
For the majority of people, at least doing sex work rather than survival sex work. Like, people aren't trading their souls themselves.
No.
Like, that's not what's going on.
It is for an allotted amount of time. And yeah, that person could absolutely overstay. I've had clients who fucking stand there talking for like an extra like 20 minutes, and I'm like, I want to get me tea.
But who hasn't had that at work? You know?
Exactly.
It's the same when you're trying to leave and like your boss wants to hold you back for an extra 5 minutes. Like,
yeah, or even they want you to do overtime for free.
Yeah.
So it's just like there is a lot of comparison. You're still in a quote unquote normal job. You're still
confined to the same, like, you still run into the same issues.
Yeah, you're still selling your body and stuff because like you're tired. You're using everything up to make it into work.
Yeah, like if you start pulling that string, like what job isn't you selling your body and you, like, for an allotted amount of time?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah.
You're not allowed to leave. Like, you have
can't have breaks.
Yeah. Like, you have been set a thing that you have to do for a certain amount of time that you have to do. Like,
yeah. It all comes down to poverty.
Yeah. Some at a detriment to your well-being and your body, and
yeah, like if I didn't have sex work, if that just was absolutely outlawed, banned, or just didn't exist, then I wouldn't have what I have today. And oh gosh, I don't know what I would do.
I'm maybe not pull that thread.
Oh, I'm okay. Like, it is a service that you're providing. Like, I provide a dom service, I provide an escort service, I provide like a mixed service. It's all services. You're not gonna get a piece of like my personal life or anything like that. It's a service. It's a facade. It's a mask. It's a fucking good mask. It's like a little play that goes on, basically. Which is why I love it. You get to be somebody who, like, you aren't in, like, personal life or whatnot. And it's fun. I like it. I understand for survival sex workers, it might not be fun.
I feel like, I don't mean we shouldn't be talking about them, that is not what I mean, but that feels like such a separate issue.
Yeah, like, I've only got my views
and your own experiences, totally.
And they're so different, but this will still affect me, even if, like, even though I've got, like, I guess you could call it the bright side of sex work, not being a survival sex worker, it still will affect me in so many ways. But it really, really needs to focus on survival sex workers rather than the whole umbrella of just female prostitution. Which is where it's so wrong, where they're just shaming women, basically. So yeah, this has been a fun episode. It's been very, very annoying for me because It just doesn't highlight the actual problems that we have.
No.
Instead, it goes, oh,
It's just shock value, and there's nothing to back up what they're actually saying for the most
absolutely.
part. Like,
Yeah.
we've not went through absolutely everything, and I've realised we have just spoken about the forewords. There is another 50 odd pages of
Yep.
consultation where they define and go into like all the terminology used and what the bill is actually planning on setting out. Which, if anybody's interested, we'll put a link to on all my links if anybody wants to go and have a look. At the very, very bottom is the actual questionnaire for the consultation, which I'm going to attempt to cut out and also put on all my links if anybody wants to fill it in and send it back and just put their views across, whatever that may be. Obviously, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but you hopefully should know ours by the end of this. I feel like we both feel pretty strongly on this. Yeah. If you want more information and more kind of like correct facts and studies that have been done, Decrim Now and ECP, so Echo Charlie Papa, both have pages on their website about the Nordic model, and go into a lot of the studies that have been done both in countries that have the Nordic model and how that's kind of changed the landscape of sex work over the time that it's been there, but also into countries that have brought the full decriminalisation in, which obviously both the organisations support as well as us, and a bit about how that has changed the landscape of sex work over the course of that being in there. Definitely worth a read if you're interested. I feel like we'll probably cover that in a future episode as well. But we'll leave a wee gap so we're not going too politically heavy. I hope it's at least been informative for you guys and not just been us ranting. Which I think we were needing. We were needing a rant because it's just
it's ridiculous.
I'm almost at a loss for words with how just like it's just frustrating. It's very frustrating.
It is when people just blanket the truth about what's happening and they think, oh, we can outlaw this, and it's like, no, you're ignoring the actual problem.
I hate it when people use a vulnerable group to like not guilt people into supporting them, but do you know what I mean? They use stories and they kind of twist what's going on to like get people riled up about a problem when like the thing they're suggesting is going to make things harder for these people. Like all these stories, all these statistics that they're like putting out to all these women or people just in general, but in this case women because that's the angle they're going for.
Yeah.
Like it's actually going to harm all these people if this goes ahead. Like it's just like it's so icky. Like it's just icky and wrong to me. Like I can't stomach it.
They need actual sex workers to come into this, allow us to come into this, and survival sex workers absolutely are a must to actually have their say. Like sit around
like
a
go and
table.
speak to them and find out what is going to help them because there's no chance in hell that they're going to turn around and be like, oh yeah, criminalise all our clients. That'll help. That means that any place that I go, there's going to be police potentially sitting outside waiting for clients to show up because
that's happened.
They can arrest them and great, that's going to make my life easier. That's going to no.
Like I want to build a dungeon in the future, for sex workers to use and things like that, and I don't want that to be
just looming over them.
Just a fucking trap, basically. Totally. I want people to feel safe.
Yeah.
But no.
Cool. So as I was saying, we'll put everything up on all my links. If you want to put your opinion across, you've got till the 12th of September is when the consultation closes. So yeah, we shall see what happens. But yeah, no to the Nordic model in Scotland. No.
Right.
Oh, I'm so disappointed in Norway. They're so good, and so much of their other social policies, like it's just
didn't you? Yeah, you said you wanted to move
Yeah,
there.
yeah, I was learning Norwegian. Like I was like that was in my 5-year plan, and now it is not.
Bye, mate.
It's not. I can't do it. I don't understand. So sad. But
It is. It is. But yeah,
anyway.
this has been Behind the Paddle podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Spotify. If you want to support us, you are more than welcome to. We would really, really appreciate that. That really gives us a boost in keeping this going.
Yeah, totally.
We do have a dark fans where if anybody does want lovely and humiliating, then just contact us.
Mm-hmm.
What else is there?
As always, we've got a little discount code for you guys on thesanctuaryofsin.com. If you use Behind the Paddle as the code at the checkout, you'll get a 10% discount.
Yeah. There is the Uncensored Market.
Yeah.
Which has in December.
So the market's in December. We've got our launch event on the 22nd of September. The tickets are up now if anybody is wanting to come along and just find out a wee bit more about the market and network with other people in the industry.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to come along. Check us out.
Yeah, and I think that is it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Hopefully you've learned something.
Yeah. Scotland is a bit depressing when it comes to sex work. But yeah, thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.